Have you ever wondered whether you're doing better or worse than most people when it comes to money and savings? Maybe you've scrolled through social media seeing friends post vacations or new cars, wondering how they can afford all that. Or maybe you've stared at your bank balance late at night thinking, am I actually behind everyone else my age? Today, I'm pulling back the curtain on the financial reality of the average person, and some of these numbers will shock you. I'm Max, and I help people understand money, personal finance, and how to build real, lasting wealth. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly where you stand financially compared to everyone else around you. And more importantly, you'll know what you can do to stop being average. But first, let me ask, when you imagine the average person's finances, what picture comes to mind? Someone organized and ready for retirement? Or someone surviving paycheck to paycheck, hoping things somehow work out? The truth is, most people have no idea what normal actually looks like when it comes to money. We assume others have their lives together because of what we see online, but reality often looks very different. Understanding real financial numbers isn't just curiosity, it's the foundation for making smarter, more confident money decisions. Think about it like fitness. If you want to get in shape, you'd want to know the average person's weight and exercise habits. The same principle applies to money. When you know where you stand, you can improve faster and more deliberately. So let's start with something that affects every working person: income. According to recent data, the median weekly pay for full-time workers is just above $1,000. That's roughly $52,000 per year before taxes. Not bad at first glance, right? But here's the catch. After federal and state taxes, Social Security, and Medicare, that number shrinks fast. Depending on where you live, you might only take home between $35,000 and $40,000 per year. Suddenly, that average income doesn't look as comfortable as you thought. And remember, this is individual income, not household. So we're talking about one person's paycheck. If you're earning around $26 per hour, congratulations. You're right at the national median. But being average with income doesn't mean you're safe financially. The real question is, what are people doing with that money once they earn it? This is where things get fascinating, and honestly, a bit concerning. Let's talk about retirement savings, because this is where most people face a rude awakening. The Federal Reserve reports the median retirement balance among Americans is about $65,000. Before you feel relieved or panicked, remember, that includes all ages of people who even have retirement accounts. And here's the kicker: 1 in 4 Americans has zero saved for retirement. That means 25% of people are planning to rely completely on Social Security when they stop working. For those with savings, the differences by age are massive and honestly a bit alarming. People under 25 have less than $2,000 saved for retirement. The 25 to 34 group averages around $14,000. By 65 or older, the median climbs to $88,000. But even that isn't much. Let's put that into perspective. Using the traditional 4% withdrawal rule, that's about $3,500 per year. One mile. That equals less than $300 per month. $300. Could you survive on that amount in retirement? Even if your home is paid off, that wouldn't cover groceries, healthcare, or utilities for long. This is why understanding these numbers matters. You can't fix what you don't measure. If you're in your 20s, 30s, or 40s, you should be asking, am I saving enough? Because clearly the average person isn't. Speaking of Social Security, since so many people rely on it, let's see what the average benefit really looks like. The Social Security Administration reports the average monthly payment is about $1,550. That's roughly $18,600 per year, before accounting for taxes or inflation. If you worked fewer years or earned less, your benefit will be even smaller than that. For some, that's barely enough to keep the lights on. Others plan their future assuming they'll get nothing from Social Security and treat any benefit as a bonus. Honestly, that's not a bad mindset considering the program's long-term funding challenges. But let's switch gears and look at something that affects your daily life: spending. How much does the average household actually spend each month? And what does that reveal about our financial habits? According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average American household spends about $5,577 per month. That's roughly $67,000 every year, just to maintain an average lifestyle. Which means to simply break even, your household must bring home at least that much after taxes. And remember, this is take-home pay, not your pre-tax salary. If you want to save or invest, you'll need to earn far more than that baseline. Let's break that spending down because the details are eye-opening. Housing takes the biggest bite at roughly $1,885 per month. That's over $22,000 per year just to keep a roof over your head. Max comments playfully, and if you live in New York, that might only get you a closet with a window. Food comes next, costing about $691 per month, or more than $8,000 a year. If you're spending less than that feeding your family, you're either a genius shopper or living on ramen noodles. Transportation eats up another $913 monthly, covering car payments, gas, and maintenance. Altogether, that's nearly $11,000 per year just to move from point A to point B. When you add housing and transportation together, that's over half the average income already spent. Max sums it up. If housing and commuting cost more than 50% of your income, it's time to rethink your setup. And that's before accounting for insurance, healthcare, or even a single dollar of entertainment. The takeaway? The average lifestyle is already stretched thin, leaving little room to save or invest. Now let's talk about credit scores, a number that silently controls much of your financial life. According to Experian, the average FICO score in America is 715. That puts most people in the good credit category, decent but not excellent. It shows people are doing some things right, like paying bills on time and keeping debt levels reasonable. But don't let that number fool you into thinking everyone's financially healthy. Many still walk around with scores in the 600s or even the 500s, struggling to get approved for loans. Your credit score impacts everything, from your mortgage rate to your ability to rent an apartment. Even some employers check credit reports before hiring new workers. The rules for maintaining good credit aren't rocket science. Pay bills on time, keep balances low, and avoid unnecessary accounts. But somehow, a large percentage of people still manage to mess this up. And that leads us straight into the ugly part of the picture, credit card debt. The average household carries more than $9,000 in credit card balances. That's not a mortgage or a car loan. It's money spent on stuff that often has no lasting value. Worse, those balances are charged interest rates of 15 to 25% or even higher. Paying 20% interest on $9,000 means burning $1,800 a year in interest alone. Max shakes his head. That's money that could have been invested, but instead it's funding the credit card company's profits. And here's the harsh truth. Most of that debt isn't from emergencies. It's from everyday impulse spending. Clothes, gadgets, dinners out, online shopping, small indulgences that snowball into financial chains. The fix is simple, even if it isn't easy. Pay off your balance in full every month. If you can't afford something in cash, don't buy it unless it's a true emergency. And if you already have balances, paying them off should be your top priority before investing a cent. Because there's no point earning 7% in the stock market if you're losing 20% to credit cards. Now that we've covered income, spending, and debt, let's look at the big picture metric, net worth. Net worth is simple, what you own minus what you owe. Add up your cash, investments, property, and possessions, then subtract your debts and loans. Whatever remains is your financial reality, the most honest number you'll ever face. According to the Federal Reserve, the median American household has a net worth of about $122,000. But just like retirement savings, that number changes dramatically by age group. If you're under 35, the median is less than $14,000. Between 35 and 44, it jumps to $91,000. Ages 45 to 54 average $168,000, and by 65 plus, it's $266,000. Those numbers might sound big, but spread across decades of work, they're really not. What's fascinating is that these milestones are completely achievable with discipline, consistency, and time. You don't need to be a financial genius or start a tech company to reach those numbers. You just need to consistently spend less than you earn and invest the difference for the long term. But there's another side to this story that explains why so few people succeed. Saving habits. The Bureau of Economic Analysis reports that Americans save only about 6% of their after-tax income. 6% might sound fine, but it's not nearly enough to build real financial security. Think about what 6% really means. If you earn $50,000, you're saving just $3,000 a year. Out of that, you still have to cover things like car repairs or a future down payment, which means almost nothing is left for long-term wealth building. Consider this. The average down payment on a home is $62,000. A kitchen renovation costs about $26,000. A new car averages over $47,000. How far will a 6% savings rate get you toward those goals? Most financial experts suggest saving 10 to 15% specifically for retirement. And that's in addition to whatever you're saving for other short-term goals. If you want to retire comfortably or early, you'll likely need to save even more. Speaking of retirement, when do most people actually stop working? If you guess 65, you're close, but not quite right. Recent data shows the average American retires at 61 years old. That might sound appealing, but there's a problem hidden in that number. Full Social Security benefits don't kick in until 67, leaving a 6-year financial gap. How do you cover those 6 years if your savings aren't strong enough? This is the moment when many retirees realize they've underestimated their needs. Imagine working for nearly 4 decades, then facing 2 decades of retirement with limited funds. The Social Security Administration says someone reaching age 65 can expect to live another 20 years. That means if you retire at 61, you might have 25 years of retirement to finance. 25 years. That's longer than many people's entire working careers. And here's the sobering part. How many of those years will you still be healthy enough to enjoy? At 61, you may feel great, but at 75 or 81, life looks different. Time catches up and health costs rise sharply when you can least afford them. This is why understanding financial statistics isn't just about curiosity, it's survival planning. When the average person retires with $88,000 and $9,000 in credit card debt, something's broken. But here's the good news. You can absolutely beat these averages. In fact, doing better than average doesn't take extreme luck or risky investments. It just requires being slightly more disciplined than the crowd. If you consistently save more than 6%, you're already ahead of half the population. If you avoid credit card debt, you're way ahead of the rest. And if you actually invest regularly instead of letting cash sit idle, you're miles ahead. Beating the average isn't about perfection, it's about direction. Every percentage point better compounds into a huge advantage over time. Let's do some quick math. If the average household spends $5,500 per month, what if you spent $4,500? You'd free up $12,000 a year for savings and investments. Do that consistently for a few decades, and you'll be in a completely different league. The same logic applies everywhere. Earn slightly more, save slightly more, and avoid unnecessary debt. These small differences create a compound effect that separates the comfortable from the struggling. The real issue isn't that people can't save. It's that they underestimate how little effort it takes to outperform average. The average person spends unconsciously, but wealth builders act intentionally. The average person reacts to bills, but the wealthy plan ahead. The average person waits for a raise, but the disciplined create extra income streams. Every financial upgrade begins with awareness, and that's exactly what these statistics provide. Once you know what average really looks like, you can decide whether you want to be part of it or rise above it. Let me show you 3 quick examples that prove income alone doesn't determine success. First, Alex earns $52,000 a year, the national median, but spends nearly everything each month. 10 years later, he still lives paycheck to paycheck, wondering why life feels stuck. Second, Brianna also earns $52,000, but she spends less than she earns and invests the rest. A decade later, she's built a healthy investment portfolio and real options for her future. And third, Marcus earns $65,000, yet he carries $12,000 in credit card debt and never saves. He looks richer on the outside, but constantly feels pressure inside because debt never sleeps. These examples show that behavior matters far more than salary. Your habits decide your financial future, not your income bracket. Most people think they'll catch up later, but later rarely comes. They assume bigger paychecks will fix everything, yet spending always expands to match. The truth is, financial security isn't about making more, it's about keeping more. The average path leads to constant stress, delayed dreams, and retirement filled with worry. But a small shift in mindset can completely rewrite that story. Instead of asking, how do I afford this? Ask, do I even need this? Instead of copying others' spending habits, build systems that reward your long-term self. Being intentional with money means choosing progress over appearance. It's not about deprivation, it's about direction. Every dollar you save buys you freedom from something later. Stress, regret, or obligation. And that freedom compounds just like money does. Let's revisit that median net worth number, $122,000. It sounds respectable, but stretched across an entire household, it's fragile. One medical emergency or job loss can erase years of progress. That's why the goal isn't to meet the average, it's to outgrow it. Financial peace begins where comparison ends. Comparing yourself to others creates anxiety. Comparing yourself to yesterday creates growth. The average person avoids looking at their numbers because they're afraid of what they'll find. But awareness is power. You can't change what you refuse to face. Once you know your real income, expenses, and debt, you can start taking back control. Think of your finances like a map. You can't reach the destination without knowing your location. When you start tracking, budgeting, and investing, everything shifts from random to intentional. You stop reacting to money and start directing it. That's when compound growth begins working in your favor, not against you. Because wealth doesn't appear overnight. It grows in the background while you stay consistent. Remember, most people aren't failing because they're lazy. They're failing because they're unaware. They don't realize small financial leaks can sink even big ships. Like subscriptions never used, food waste, or high-interest debts that quietly drain wealth every month. Max says calmly, "You don't have to overhaul your life overnight, just fix one leak at a time." Progress in money is like fitness, slow, steady, and built through repetition, not intensity. The people who win financially aren't the smartest. They're the most consistent. They automate savings, invest regularly, and make their goals harder to ignore than distractions. Over time, consistency beats intelligence, discipline beats luck, and awareness beats denial. You don't have to be exceptional to build wealth. You just have to stop being average. Because the average person doesn't plan, they just hope. The average person doesn't invest, they wait for the right time. The average person doesn't track expenses, they assume it'll work out somehow. Don't be that person. Be the one who learns, acts, and adjusts. Every step away from average is a step toward independence. Max smiles slightly. And trust me, financial independence feels far better than looking rich ever could. Because once you stop chasing appearances and start mastering your numbers, everything in life gets easier. Let's zoom out and look at the big picture of what we've uncovered so far. The median income, about $52,000 a year before taxes. The median retirement savings, $65,000, and 1 in 4 have nothing saved at all. The average household spending, $67,000 a year, more than most earn. The typical credit card debt, $9,000 with punishing interest rates. The median net worth, $122,000, though half of that disappears with a single crisis. And the average savings rate, just 6%, barely enough to move the needle. These numbers don't describe success, they describe a warning sign. Because if you live like most people, you'll retire like most people, broke and stressed. Average isn't a goal, it's a caution label. Max pauses and says, the good news? You're not stuck there. Beating average is easier than you think, because the bar is surprisingly low. Save more than 6%, avoid credit card debt, and invest with purpose. Do those 3 things consistently, and you'll outperform most of the country. You don't need to chase risky stocks, buy crypto at midnight, or flip real estate to get ahead. Just build habits that compound quietly while everyone else chases shortcuts. Because wealth doesn't reward intensity, it rewards consistency. Every month you stay disciplined. You build financial muscle that never fades. Max smiles gently. Most people aren't behind because they can't do it. They're behind because they never started. The earlier you start, the easier it gets, and the less you'll depend on luck later. Let's play a quick what-if scenario. What if you save just $200 more each month than the average person? Over 30 years with compound growth, that could become hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's not magic, it's math. And that's why understanding the averages is so powerful. It gives you a baseline to beat. Once you see what normal looks like, you realize how easy it is to do better. But here's the thing, most people won't. They'll nod, agree it's important, and go back to the same habits tomorrow. Don't let that be you. You're already doing something different by learning, watching, and thinking about your money today. That awareness alone puts you ahead of millions who never even check their balances. So don't waste that head start. Build on it. Review your income, track your spending, and automate your savings. Even a 1% improvement each month leads to life-changing progress over time. Max leans forward. You don't need permission to change. You just need a plan and persistence. Remember, the goal isn't to get rich fast. It's to never be poor again. And that kind of wealth is built not wished for. It's built when you choose discipline over distraction, education over envy, and action over excuses. The average person wants comfort. The successful person builds capability. The average person spends for status. The successful person invests for freedom. The average person fears change. The successful person uses it to grow. You get to decide which person you want to be. Because the line between average and extraordinary is drawn by daily choices, not destiny. Once you know what the average looks like, you have no excuse to settle for it. And if you're already doing slightly better, don't get complacent. Keep improving. Celebrate progress, but never stop evolving. Each dollar saved, each debt paid, each wise investment is a vote for your future self. And one day your financial peace will quietly shout louder than anyone else's lifestyle flex. Max concludes softly, you deserve more than surviving. You deserve to thrive. So ask yourself honestly, do you want to be average or do you want to be free? If some of these numbers felt uncomfortably close to your reality, don't panic. It's not too late to change. The fact that you're here, learning and reflecting, already separates you from the majority. Most people never even look at their financial truth. They just hope it works out someday. But hope isn't a strategy, habits are. Every smart choice you make, no matter how small, compounds into a better life over time. Maybe you're 35 with less than 14,000 in net worth. That doesn't mean you're doomed. It simply means you have work to do and decades ahead to get it right. And if you're already doing better than these averages, don't use that as a reason to coast. Use it as a reminder that progress never stops. You might have a great credit score but weak retirement savings or vice versa. Every area of your finances deserves attention, balance, and a plan. The numbers we've talked about today aren't meant to shame anyone. They're meant to awaken everyone. Because once you understand the financial reality of the average person, you gain perspective and power. Power to choose differently. Power to build intentionally. Power to protect your future. Average doesn't have to define you. It just shows you where to begin. Remember, being better than average isn't about greed. It's about freedom. Freedom from anxiety, debt, and the constant pressure of barely making it. Financial peace isn't about having millions. It's about not worrying when the bills arrive. It's about knowing your money works for you, not against you. And that kind of peace starts the moment you decide to take control. So start today, track your numbers, make a plan, and commit to small, consistent action. Every improvement, no matter how tiny, compounds into something extraordinary with time. Max looks into the camera. Don't just learn these stats, use them. Use them to motivate yourself, to plan smarter, and to build a future you're proud of. Share this video with someone who needs that same wake-up call, because financial awareness multiplies when shared. And if this helped you see money differently, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Together, we'll keep breaking down real-world finance and building smarter habits step by step. Because knowledge alone changes nothing, but action changes everything. I'm Max, and this was your reminder that average isn't safety. It's just a starting point. Once you know the average, it's easy to beat it. Stay curious, stay disciplined, and I'll see you in the next one.